Good evening. We'd like to call this regular meeting of the Princeton Public Schools Board of Education to order, Tuesday, April 25th, 2017. Welcome to this meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. The board is an elected, unpaid group of 10 citizens who set policy and make decisions on educational, financial, and personnel matters for the Princeton Public Schools on behalf of all residents. We're always pleased when the community comes to attend our meetings. The board and the school district operate under applicable New Jersey laws and regulations of the New Jersey State Board of Education. Each meeting contains 3 opportunities for those attending to comment on items in the published agenda or of other matters of interest to them. The board reserves the right to limit the time allotted to public participation. Law limits discussion of individual personnel and other confidential matters. We hope that our meetings provide useful opportunities for communication between the board and the community. Thank you for attending. And with that, Ms. Kennedy, could you please call the roll?
Patrick Sullivan.
Here.
Daphne Kendall. Here. Betsy Calvert-Baglio.
Here.
Debbie Bronfeld.
Here.
Justin Doran. Absent. Bill Hare. Here. Vern Spruill. Absent. Greg Stankiewicz. Here. Connie Witter.
Here.
Evelyn Spahn. Absent. Abby Emerson.
Here.
Emerson. And Brian Lee.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'd like to move to item D1, the adoption of the minutes for our March 28, 2017 meeting. May I have a motion? Thank you, Connie. And a second, Daphne. Any discussion on the minutes of March 28, 2017? Hearing none, this is a just show of hands vote. All in favor? I don't know. Well, maybe we should try that next time. I don't know. I'm a little nervous about these newfangled technology things. So how about just good old show of hands, the way we've been doing it for 5,000 years. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Any opposed? No. Okay. And one abstention. Okay, thank you. Okay, so as I said, we have several public forums. The first one and the last one are for any topics of interest to the public, and then we have one in the sort of middle of the presentation, which is on issues that are in agenda items only. So this is our first public session, limited to 15 minutes total. If any, it depends on, I just ask you to be respectful of the full 15-minute allotment, so that if we see a lot of people want to speak at this one, that you trim your comments accordingly. And if you can just identify yourself and your address as you come to the microphone, we appreciate it. We all know Dr. Carell, but
Bob Carell, I teach science at the high school. I was going to talk at the last meeting, but it got a little late. So there was one thing. First, I wanted to just talk about the unconference. I am one who really does not like in-service days. I'd much rather have my students in class and feel that those are much more productive. I went into the unconference as a skeptic, and I came out as a believer. I want to give a shout out to the session that I attended as an attendee, to Krista Galen, who ran the session. She was very helpful in our very differentiated learning environment, that everybody was looking for a different thing to help with Outlook. It was very helpful for those of us who had already gone into Outlook. And it also created a community of people working with the LMS with the session that I ran. So I really liked the unconference, and I really hope we'll do that again. I really liked it. My second quick thing is I just want to commend, I notice on the agenda for tonight, there's a third person from within the district in the last month and a half or so who's being promoted. I know that's something we didn't do a lot of in the past. I think this district is unique and that it takes a while to understand what's going on in this district, and I think there's a big advantage to using the talent we have within. I understand when you hire from within, you create another opening that you have to fill. I understand the challenges there, but I think in the long run, the district will benefit from people who know the way the district works and can hit their ground running. The third thing is probably not as nice a thing to talk about, but I want to reply to the comments that a member of the public gave at the last meeting about the Bell Schedule Committee and the schedule at the high school. I would say that I was clearly in the opposition to any changes at the previous times that we tried to adopt any Bell schedule, and on the other side of that this time, working towards the changes. I don't think it was fair to the two people who were singled out from the podium that they were laid the blame. They were fighting a faculty that was resistant to change at the time, so I don't think that that was fair to single those people out. There's been great number of changes in the last 6 years. There's been a tremendous turnover in terms of seniority of the faculty. I don't think it would surprise anybody that we're much younger as a faculty than we were 6 years ago, and therefore much more open to change. I think also the research in terms of sleep is much better documented than it was 6 years ago. And the third thing that I don't gets enough credit is our student board members, led by our 2 last year and our 2 this year, with the not, just complaining, but also survey data that they forced us to actually do a real survey that really allowed us to really think about what we're doing. I think they deserve a lot of the credit for the momentum that we've built towards the Bell Schedule Committee. So I just think it was unfair that the 2 individuals who weren't there to defend themselves were singled out last time. The final thing was, I wasn't going to say anything about this, but just the fact that you won't vote using the newfangled technology, you don't seem to have a hesitancy to shove newfangled technology at us.
It's not me, Bob. I hate technology. Yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
Patty Manhart. I'm a history teacher at the high school, but today I'm speaking to you as the girls' head volleyball coach. As you may know, I've spoken on this topic before, but it was to a different set of board members. And I just want to elaborate on a little bit more detail the importance of fully funding the girls' volleyball program moving into year 5. Keeping in mind that we are still conservative in our request, my first and main priority is funding an assistant coach. So in this past year, the girls were forced to incur the cost of paying a salary for a JV coach. And the majority of the teams at the high school, they have 3 fully funded coaches. And we don't even have 1 coach on the salary guide, in that moving into my 5th year, I've yet to receive a salary that's equal to teams of the same size, of the same scheduling, of the same commitment. So to total that up in the years that I've been in this position, that's a lot of kind of lost wages on my behalf. But I'm pushing just looking at Cecilia Burge next year specifically. Having her as part of the program has been so crucial to the success that we've experienced in the past year. Prior to Coach Burge joining the program, we still had a JV team. I was just pulling double duty. So every day we set up multiple nets. I planned 2 different practices. Going into games, I made 2 different lineups, and I coached 2 different matches and 2 different teams every time. So needless to say, having a JV coach is imperative, not just for my own mental health and fighting burnout, but that's what allowed us to do well in this past season, to win a league championship, in that I finally wasn't trying to split my attention between 2 different teams and 2 different programs. I also want to point out that next year we're going to have 5 seniors who have been with us since their freshman year. And if you look at the total cost that's come out of their pocket, those individuals would have paid $600. We have 2 sets of twins. We have multiple sets of siblings that have played with us. So those families have paid even more money just to be part of this team. So we're just asking for recognition. It's hard year after year to explain to my players that they still have to pay to be part of this program, and that we don't get equal funding compared to other athletics programs, at this high school, and also the programs that we compete against. I can't speak for how the players feel to not receive the same funding, treatment, support, and resources, but I can share that it leaves me feeling a little devalued and underappreciated to be fighting this battle year after year. So going into next season, it'd be great if we could just focus on the positive, worry about the volleyball specific stuff, and not have to continually fight these budget battles, and be fully funded moving forward. I know Mr. Chang sent out an email, and I really appreciate you emphasizing the positive experience that it's been for the players. Not just the girls that we have now, but also our growing alumni network. And it's been really special being able to coach those players too. So it would just be nice. Winning a championship to me doesn't signify sort of reaching as far as we can go. So I would just appreciate that focus and prioritization of the girls volleyball program moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Just a quick response. First of all, congratulations to the girls for winning the state championship. Congratulations to you for Coach of the Year. And the process, as you know, but not everyone watching at home may, is that when we have new sports that come on, the board has a practice of not funding them initially to see if they sort of take hold, and yours certainly has. Volleyball certainly has. I think you have, what, 36 young women? Yeah. So it's nice to see that growth. It's nice to have this sort of problem where you're coming to us and saying the sport is so successful and people are enjoying it so much that we need more. And so, yeah. Exactly. Well, we need to be funded equally with similar sports that have the same number of participants and the same type of season. So that's what we look at, and I know that the athletic director, Mr. Goldstein, and I, we'll look at all of those things. So we have a little bit more money in the athletic budget this year, and we weigh those priorities, and we will look very carefully at this one. We're looking at, I know hockey too, as ice hockey has come to us with, they have 60 players and are looking for a third coach for a JV team. So there's always competing priorities, but we will look very seriously at this for girls volleyball and get back to you soon. Okay.
Patty, can I just ask you a question, please? How much do the girls... Sure, go ahead. I just want to know how much the girls pay per season.
So when it started out that we weren't receiving any district funding, it was $250, then $200, $200, $100, and then that's on top of fundraising. And I had anecdotes about our first year that I didn't, fully get into, and just how difficult it's been in borrowing phys ed equipment, borrowing jerseys. Our uniforms, we've only received funding for one set of tank tops as opposed to shorts, socks, knee pads, a home jersey, and away jersey. There's a lot to look at, and so I know I've been emphasizing just the JV coach. But, there's a lot of saving, and I really tried to start shoestring budget in our first 2 years because I've always wanted the program to be affordable. And so now that we've always been popular and it's always been really positive, it would just be nice if we can say that we can be a fully funded, supported program, because we've made a lot of sacrifices in the past to get to where we are. Thanks
you.
for the question, Daphne.
Yeah.
Hello there. So, can everyone hear me? Great.
Yeah.
All right. So, I'd like to address the survey that was done with the representatives from Stanford on student stress.
Thanks. Before you start, could you just tell everyone who you are? And
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm Raisa, and I'm a 9th grader at Princeton High School.
Thank you.
So first, before addressing this, I'd just like to thank the Board of Education, the superintendent, the principal, the teachers, and of course, last and not least, our wonderful student liaisons for pushing so hard to get these results out to the public. I think they are incredibly important. So obviously, we did not see what we were hoping for in these results. We found out that students get a lot less sleep than they should be getting, that anybody recommends that they get. And that there are conflicting priorities in students' lives that really shouldn't be. The priorities between, should I spend time with my family, or should I spend an extra 2 hours finishing my bio assignment? Should I be a good friend, or should I stay up until 2 a.m. finishing this project? And these are not either-or situations that we should be putting our students in. And this obviously doesn't help with anything. It doesn't even help with time management, because students learn time management better when they have time to manage. So you may wonder why I am coming up here and just stating the obvious. I do not just like listening to the sound of my own voice. I actually want to reflect a message that I hope that I can say as one student, but I think that many students would be behind me in this message. You can let me know if I'm on point. We as students are very, very supportive of changing things and of getting this out here. And we are willing to do whatever possible to make sure that this change is brought as quickly and as most efficiently as possible. You have our support 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Raisa. And I just second that. You might hear this a couple times tonight, but I just second that I think it's the sense of the whole board that we would like to see change. And we're happy to see all the things that are happening in reaction and to this survey. But we feel it's really important to have change soon, meaning September 2017. And it's great to look further into the future, to think about things longer term that you can do that are perhaps even more fundamental, but a plan that doesn't have a meaningful action item for September 2017 is not a meaningful plan, in my opinion. So thank you for your comments and your support.
My name is Xu Cheng. I'm the resident in town. I have 2 kids in high school. I'm also the volunteer coach for the weekly volleyball program that continue the training for our high school team players. So obviously, I wrote everybody, all the board members, a letter last night, trying to urge your financial support, financial sponsorship to our high school team. Just one thing I want to highlight tonight. Not every point. I don't want to repeat all the details, but one thing I just related to the topic the girl just mentioned. I was in that town hall meeting. There's one shocking discovery out of that research, the student survey. The girls in high school experience a very dramatically higher level of the stress compared to the boys. I think the sports program is very important to help them. I think it's a great channel to help them to release the stress level they're doing. I think under the great leadership from the coach Manhart, she built a great volleyball team. We are doing great work. Girls are doing the great work. Everybody is changing after those years training from that program. I think it's very important for every board member to rethink about your budget plan, then provide your support for this particular program in town. I think thank you very much for all your consideration and for attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know you guys are pressed for time and you only had 15 minutes now, and I don't have to talk now because part of it's about the budget, and I know you're addressing that, but I also see that you're voting to approve the budget, and I am requesting that you delay that 1 week for a little more discussion, because after last month's meeting, which I have to tell you, as a supporter of the charter school, I found really disturbing as a meeting, but I won't go there for that. It was a budget meeting, and we didn't get to the budget till so late. I thought the agenda wasn't well planned. I'll let that one go too. But some of the budgeting issues that I'm looking at when the, I'm going to set my timer because I don't want to take everybody's time, but there were things in the budget that kind of stuck out to me. First, I want to say thank you to the transportation because they reduced that by $50,000, which is impressive. Whoever did that did a good job. And I watched transportation a lot. I used to be on the town transportation committee, and that's impressive. And I think it's impressive that you took the board office down $63,000. I see that it looks like it went into human resources, but it's still down $20,000. That's awesome. I don't know how you did that with personnel stuff, but that's impressive. But 3 jump out at me. And I, as a girl athlete growing up, and how important I know girls' athletics are to girls' self-esteem, I hope you get that money. But I'm noticing that the school athletics budget is to go up 23%, and that's a lot. And I'm just looking at the numbers of the 2016 to 17 was $365,000, and we're looking at $449 in the proposed, and that's a difference of $84,000, about 23%. It's a lot for athletics when our mission is education. And I know self-esteem is an important part of it, but that's a lot. And I'm noticing that media is going up 41%. Maybe we need that. Maybe that should be part of tech. But our mission is education. I see the curriculum going up 29%, and I'll tell you, I'm not going to say a word about it, except noting that that's 29%. So, I know you guys are here doing a good job. You're volunteers. I appreciate it. But there are things in the budget that I find disturbing. And the discussion about the charter school last month was disturbing for a budget meeting. There are kids. And when I looked and tried to do I'm just using the, easy read budget, and I'm not a finance person, and I'm seeing people say between numbers of it takes us $23,000 to educate a kid down to $15,000 to educate a kid, right? And I see the tuition rates for Cranberry and the teachers, and they're substantially less than anything the townspeople are paying for their kids. And I see the state of New Jersey tuition rate, and people are talking about the price of charter, and those kids are less expensive. Well, we're saying tuition for grades 1 through 5 is $19,000, grades 6 through 8 is $19,500, and grades 19 through 12 is $16,800. It's $3,000 less to educate a high schooler than, that was just a stunning number to me. It was really surprising, and I thought, wow, these are the numbers that they have. They're surprising numbers to me. That's all I'm saying about that, is that this budget, this is the superintendent's statement that was on the Keep Princeton Public Schools Strong, and we were talking about the 2% cap here, but then in another article, we say that we're not limited by that 2% cap, so the budget's going to go up more than the 2% because we're not limited by that. And I just think we need to use the same numbers all the way around between Keep Princeton Public Schools Strong, which I can't imagine that they're not going to be strong no matter what our budget is. We've got smart people in town, smart parents in town supporting kids to get them what they need and what they want. My concern, and that's why I won't say anything about curriculum increases, I want the 30% of kids that are struggling in this district to get what they need. I really do. I hope every kid in the athletic department gets equal money for I don't want to see some football team out there in 6 sets of I know we don't. But I would like it to be, any team that doesn't require physical protection, volleyball, that the kids buy their own black shorts. An away jersey and a home jersey, I'm for. But our mission is education. And I think 23% for athletics is a lot. Anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I'm Bob James, Princeton Borough. Well, it's Princeton now, so it's old school. I wasn't going to say anything tonight at all, but now I have to. Athletics is education. You learn through athletics. Princeton University's common in athletics is just that, education through athletics. And anybody to think it's not an important component in the educational process, I think is completely wrong. Funding a competitive, active athletic program is key. Kids learn different concepts in different ways, and education through athletics is an important part, and I hope it continues to be so. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments from the public? And remember, there are 2 other opportunities to comment tonight, so seeing none, we'll move on. The next part of this being a meeting where we review and approve the budget, this is item F. The structure's a little bit different. Usually we start with a president's statement and superintendent's statement, which is happening a bit later. So I'm going to turn over the meeting now. We voted on the adoption minutes, no? I thought we did. Yes. Replay the tape. Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we're on item F. So it's Ms. Kennedy. This is for you. And yeah. And do we need to move, or can everyone see the screen? All right. Okay, we'll move.
Good evening. The first thing I'd like to mention about the budget this evening is that the budget that's being presented tonight is revised from the tentative budget that was proposed on March 16th. March 16th was the last budget meeting that we had. And that's when when the board approved the tentative budget that went to the State Department of Education for approval. And then after it was approved, it was advertised in the paper. The Board of Education and the administration has the opportunity between March 16th and this evening to have made changes to the budget, either increasing or decreasing. In this case, we decreased it. So I'd like to start off with this is our budget priorities. I'm not going to read out loud to you, but you can find this here this evening. You can find it as an attachment on board docs. You'll also find it under the board tomorrow, right under the board website tab. But this can be found in multiple places. Budget process, we started off with a budget workshop on March 7th, and that's when we took everything that was requested by everyone. And at that time, our tax levy was going to be over $200 some per the average assessed home. And we were, and our tax levy was at $73,920,000. That was on March 7th at our workshop. Between March 7th and March 16th, from the discussions we had at the board workshop, changes were made to the budget. A lot of the increase was based on requested of additional staff that had been looked at again and streamlined for the budget, tentative budget on March 16th. Next, March 17th, the tentative budget, like I mentioned, went to the county for approval, advertising, and then we had more feedback through the month of March and April from the Board of Education, and then finally to this evening when we have our budget hearing and our final budget adoption. So understanding our expenses. Part of our expenses are driven by our enrollment needs. So here was just a quick overview of where we are currently as of today for enrollment, PK 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, and then the total. The next column, the next row down is the numbers that were in effect on October 15th when the annual student count is taken each year, and then the 15th the year earlier, just as a comparison reason. And then following that is projected. We had the demographic study that has been released. It was released on March 24th. It is in the process of being revised and will not be released until we get the affordable housing numbers from the town. We won't get an update on that until after we have those numbers. So as you can see, 17, 18, the enrollment is rising. It drops a little bit in 19 projections, and in 19, and then a little bit more in 20. Again, these are all without any affordable housing numbers that could potentially increase these numbers.
If I can just elaborate on what you're saying, the budget is driven to some degree by the enrollment increases. So you're looking at current enrollment here at 1384 for our elementary schools, going to a projection of 1438. So up about 50 some odd students. We see a slight drop at the middle school level, which will be in place for a couple of years and then start to climb again. And we're looking at enrollments going up well past 800 towards 900 over the next 5 years. But and then at the high school, you're seeing 1586 to 1651, which will be our high at the high school. And then that number we hope will start to come down a bit before it rises again past 1700. But we're going up by some 70 students approximately at the high school next year. And so you'll see as we're looking at adding personnel that you'll see some at the elementary and some at the high school for that reason.
Okay, so this is in the short form, the major changes that were made between what's being proposed this evening and the tentative budget. The large reductions that were made was we had the $200,000 in there to rent space. We were not sure if we would be able to rent space, so we decided that it was better just to take that money out and use it and we'll work out our space needs in other ways. We have new staff and retirement adjustments were decreased by 120,000. Health benefits were reduced by over 245,000. The reason why I was able to do that is I have the health benefits out for RFP. So I don't have the final, but the information that I'm getting back is that the rates will be lower than I had originally budgeted. So that's where that savings can come from. Curriculum and instruction, we reduced that by 100,000 because of the science program that was proposed can be accomplished K-5 with still implementing the whole program in K-5 with the amount of money that is budgeted.
We're doing it over 2 years. So
Okay.
the original ask was for 200,000 for science kits at the elementary level, and they were looking at multiple kits for each grade level. We're rolling it in over 2 years, but we are making sure that each grade level has at least one kit, so the students will have the experience and will be able to roll it in more gradually.
Okay, so that was a total reduction of $665,000 from the tentative budget of March 16th. Then there was an addition of professional development under the curriculum and instruction department. So if you look at the change, you'll see the net of 50,000 changed on that particular line. And that was for some professional development that has been discussed through for the strategic plan, Steve?
Yeah, so I'm actually very excited about this change. So even as we were able to drop the budget by over $600,000, we were able to increase the funding that we are able to provide for the kinds of professional development that will lead to the greatest changes for our students. So we are looking at, and it's training that will take place in the summer, largely when our teachers are most able to absorb new information and have time to think and process it. Very grateful to the PREA, the teacher leadership, for working out a rate for summer pay for professional development, daily rate. So we're looking at training, and you'll hear me talk more about this later, training in racial literacy for teachers, training in reading workshop for our 8th grade, training professional development in problem-based learning, in technology. So we're excited about being able to bring teachers together at a time in the summer when they can learn with each other, from each other, and then implement new ideas for the start in September.
Okay. So with those changes, this is the detail of the different departments, and you can see where changes have been made from 16-17 budgeted to proposed 17-18. And you'll see under curriculum and instruction, the net is 150,000 or 50,000 because we reduced by 50 and then added 50.
And if I can say, like, the numbers tell a story. So numbers are about, they're not about dollars and cents, they're about values. And you look at an institution, any institution, and you can determine their values by looking at their budget. So when I assess an educational institution, I want to see them put as much money as they possibly can into professional development for teachers, because that has the biggest impact on the lives of our students. When you're looking at the increase in the athletics, and there was a reference to this, please remember that there was a time, 2010, when there were significant cuts made to athletics, and the booster clubs were taking on much of the burden of paying for what one would consider essentials, uniforms, equipment, those kinds of things. So in the past year, we've made a commitment to, as a district, take on more of the athletic expenses that are considered essential expenses that in fact the booster clubs were paying for, whether it was for personnel, whether it was for transportation, whether it was for uniforms and equipment. So the increase there is actually to reach a level where we are funding appropriately for our athletics program.
So this is a lot of detail because this is a lot of detail for public, but it's actually even more detail. The accounts are broken down much further than that are represented here. Wait, did I miss one? No, I think this is the next category. And then, of course, the budget is because education is very high in salaries because our product is education and we need teachers to do that and support staff and administration and so on. So that shows in this budget, in the proposed budget, we had this, when we last discussed budget, we had 3 new FTEs remaining in the budget. We have bumped that number up and we are including 5 new FTEs. They will be spread through the district where they are most needed by the recommendation of the superintendent as we move through the year and see where enrollment and other needs appear. EPSs, it includes a few new EPSs plus the increase from one year to the next. And then the rest you can see there. We did reduce requested staff from the tentative budget with this budget. Yes, so you had a question?
Yes, just about the PRESA line item, the $830,000 increase. Can you just speak to that, the need for?
That's not new staff, that's increases. This is just from one budget year to the next.
Okay.
So that's contractual.
Okay,
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
And then it's not a direct line from line because depending on if you have people that come and go, so the amounts are always the same, but that PRESA line, as every other line, is based on contractual increases, but the configuration may have changed from one year to
Might
another.
have additional staff.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to be
Yeah.
I just want to be sure that everyone's aware we're not giving the press a 10% increase.
Oh, my goodness, no.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but we have
If you
a lot
consider
of
that we
more
have
aides, we have-
190 new students coming into the district one year, this year versus last year, you're going to see increases in the number of assistants we might need, et cetera. So you're reflecting a larger number of staff as well as increases.
Yeah. Okay. And then this is the non-discretionary expenses. So we have insurance, property casualty and workers' comp. We have health benefits, which we see again, but due to the RFP, we're actually only going to increase about $300,000. And then someone asked me what is PILOHB is, payment in lieu of health benefits.
Oh, okay.
And then shared savings. So that's an expense that we have. That's also contractual. Other district-wide is pensions and some other categories that we have. Again, non-discretionary. Charter school, non-discretionary. Utilities, obviously. The rental agreement we had in there. I just put it in non-discretionary because we had nowhere else to put it. But it's not any longer in the budget. And then the New Jersey School Development Authority debt payment is a required payment that we have to give back to the state. Actually, how it happens is it's a reduction in state aid as in lieu of the payment. So, and this category we reduced by $445,000. Okay, and then so there's the general fund, which includes the operating budget plus the capital reserve. So that total budget is $87,549. Then we have our debt obligation, which again is non-discretionary. So we include that there. And then federal and state grants, that number is estimated at this time because that's just how that happens. We won't know exactly what we get until we get well into the next year. And then reserve for encumbrances is an accounting function to balance out the accounts that we're at. So the total budget will be $95,086,000. Okay. And then just a quick view, all salaries, 49, all non-discretionary, 23. And that leaves only 13 million out of 86 million of your disposable income, per se. You know, what you could do with your programs, innovations, anything, you know, existing, carrying on the programs. That's how it breaks out. Operating budget, slightly different from the total general fund. The operating budget is where all the revenues are collected for. Capital reserve are funds we already have that we collect over time. So the general fund, which is the Fund 10, don't want to get too much into accounting, but the total general fund is 87 million, operating budget 86 million. Capital reserve, what happens with capital reserve, we already have the funds in a bank account called capital reserve. And for this year, we're slotting $1 million to fund the potential installation of trailers. And the plan would be to make trailers offices for adults, freeing up a classroom space for students to support to help the enrollment growth. Now,
And that's at the high school.
That's at the high school. Yeah. So what happens with the capital reserve, we're just putting $1 million in. It actually isn't going anywhere. It's in a bank account, and we actually only spend it as we need it. So if we don't spend the whole $1 million, that goes back into the capital reserve account or stays in the capital reserve account. But the money's there for us to use it. Again, it doesn't impact taxes in any way because it's already funds that we have collecting whatever little interest we can collect. Oops.
Oh, can't miss the pie.
No, we gotta have pie. Always need pie.
You worked hard on this chart.
I did. It's very busy, but it's the breakout of all the different expenses. The previous expense list that you saw, this shows you. I had to group it to be able to get the pie to be this less busy as the line was. So we have high school and JW together, all the elementaries together. The elementary school is 1%, the high school and middle school together are 1% of the budget. And then you can see the rest. I don't know how easy it is to see from the view in the back, but it is also on the board docs. You can see it up close.
And the important thing here would be the amount actually for salaries and benefits, which is 68, almost 70% of the total budget. So for personnel.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our expenses. Understanding revenues. Okay. So our revenues, the revenue is a lot easier to go over because we don't have very many revenue streams. Short and sweet. So back down at the bottom, you'll see the total general fund at 87 million. Operating budget, 86 million. So we know where the capital reserve funds come from. So the 86 million is broke down into 6 categories. Tax levy being, of course, the largest. Next largest portion we get is Cranberry tuition revenue. State aid fund balance is either monies that we capture from the prior year that we have. We also allot, when we get extraordinary aid for the prior year, we can put that into the following year. It's almost like a 2-year behind. Also, there's when we're audited, if there's funds that are over the 2%, we're required by law to put that in as a revenue stream for the following year. So again, it's almost like 2 years back. Other revenues are just interest income, some other, not that we're getting $600,000 in interest income, be assured, but there's some other categories, hazardous routes, and a few other different categories that comes up with the 600,000, and then other tuition is from, basically from our staff, the bulk of it, capital reserve. And as you see, when we submit a budget, it has to be in balance. We have to have enough revenues to support the proposed expenditures. Okay. And there's our, we need a revenue pie as well. Again, it's not as busy because there's not as many categories. Okay, I also wanted just to point out that as you see that the big section in this pie is 83% of our revenue is tax levy. And then the balance of the tax levy comparison of non-tax revenues. So there's all the other pieces. So we have 5 other pieces, but the bulk, as as was shown, is of course the tax levy. And then this is the tax levy impact. A real quick explanation of tax levy. When a budget is prepared, a tax levy is calculated for a July to June budget. That's how a school year runs. So when you see the tax levy for 17-18, you see general tax levy, which you saw on an earlier screen, 73 million. And then debt service, which is a requirement during the time of the life of the debt. And this year it's 5 million. So the total tax levy that will be collected for the school year will be 78,500,000. It's an increase of 2.9 million over the prior year. When you're taxed at your home, the tax levy is based on a calendar year. So how that is calculated, and is not calculated by the school district, this is just a projection. It's 50% of the prior year's budget and 50% of the new year budget. So you're getting half of the 16-17 and half of the 17-18. Basically for 2017, you're getting the 2017 that you see on both of the different budgets. I don't know if I'm making that clear enough or not. So from 2016, the total tax that was collected for 2016 to support the schools was 74 million. The taxes that will be raised in 2017 will be 77 million. It's 2.5 million more. So that tax impact for the school year will be 187.78, increase on the assessed home value of 821,000. Okay, and then the use of eligible waivers. So due to our enrollment, the state automatically gave us an enrollment waiver and embedded it into our tax levy. We had some banked enrollment waiver as well. So our total eligible waiver total was 2.1 million that we could have used in 17-18 or a couple years following. The proposed budget here is requesting the 1.3 million. All of the banked enrollment, the health benefit waiver that went down from 200 over, I think it was about 270, to now 47,000 due to the decrease in the health benefit expense line. So we'll use a portion of the new enrollment, and then the balance, which is an estimated 768,000, will be banked for future use should we need it.
Does that make sense? Members of the board?
Again, the average increase is 187, and that's just broke down on the additional waivers that were used. Okay, and then our mission: to prepare all of our students to lead lives of joy and purpose as knowledgeable, creative, and compassionate citizens of a global society. These are some of the offerings that the school district offers to the students in Princeton. We have to go through the rest of the pictures.
We do have to go through that.
Our mission is school performances.
Ms. Kennedy worked very, very hard on the budget and almost as hard on the PowerPoint presentation.
The budget was easy compared to the PowerPoint.
So we want to make sure we get through every slide.
Yeah. So the mission, these are actually 3 of the district goals: enhance wellness and balance, every child known, closing the achievement gap, and these are students that we're performing.
Yep.
And then there's innovation and experimentation. And then there's communication, caring, connectedness, correct, Superintendent? Yep. And there you have 2 adults caring and connecting with a student. And then our big mission is success for all students. And last but not least is how it all blends together.
So a budget it's really about vision and values, and all of the dollars and cents that we looked at in all those various categories and columns are really tied to our strategic planning goals. The wellness and balance, the every child known, closing the achievement gap, innovation and experimentation, and communication, care, and connectedness. So all of the expenses in the budget have a home under those goals. And so I just want to thank Ms. Kennedy again for a really clear presentation of a complex set of numbers, and also for the very hard work in bringing the budget down to, I think, a manageable level. And would invite the board now to see if you have any questions or comments that you want to make.
Just a question, a clarification, Ms. Kennedy, can you go back to the page that had the increase?
Yeah.
The before the pictures, obviously. That. I think, no, this one, yes. So the total increase, just to be clear, is 3.93%. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Correct.
That's correct.
Of which 2.7 is Princeton Public Schools, and 1.2 is the Princeton Charter School tax increase based on the enrollment increase that they made. And so I would just like to point out that even with the rising enrollments that you saw earlier in this presentation, Ms. Kennedy and this board have kept the increase almost to the hundredth of a percentage point what it was last year, while adding, based on comments from some of our board members, including Ms. Kendall last time, staff that is facing our students and helping our children, including spending additional funds on training, which, as Mr. Cochran mentioned, is so important. So I think, we hope that the community understands that, the board, with the levers that it has as control, has done a terrific job, and Ms. Kennedy really deserves to be commended. We've tried our best with the charter school, and we can talk about that later on. That's outside of our control, and with the levers that we do control, we've done very well. So I just want to thank you, Ms. Kennedy, for doing such a great job over this process, over the last few months, starting with some fairly alarming numbers and getting it down to a very humane and child-facing budget that's also as friendly to taxpayers as we could possibly make it. So congratulations, and I want to thank you so much for all of your work on this.
Any other comments or questions? Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to add my congratulations, my thanks. I was privileged to serve, or I am privileged to serve on the Budget Committee. So I've seen the hard work that Superintendent Cochran, that Stephanie Kennedy have put into this. The superintendent has talked about trying to shake out coins, and change from the sofa, to try. And that's really, literally, I have seen teachers and staff saying, we have needs, but we understand how difficult the environment has been. There were changes that came totally unexpectedly, and we're going to do everything possible to try to keep it to as minimum as possible. And then we've seen time after time that the reductions to try to get it down so that we can be as good a financial steward as possible, given that we want to maintain the mission for the students. So, I just want to say thank you for all the effort.
Thank you. And I would commend the board as well for pushing hard to make sure that we included in the budget those people and programs that are going to make the biggest difference to students. We were at a point where we now have 5 new FTEs in the budget, and there was a time when we had fewer. But we have needs at the elementary level because of enrollment, with probably 2 new positions at least, and we have needs at the high school. So we're looking at a learning consultant at the high school. We're looking at a social worker who will be an additional social worker to actually help with students and families at the high school and the middle school, and sort of help to bridge the gap between those 2 schools. And then we're looking at some pieces of other programs, speech behaviorist, that kind of thing. We're still tight. We're still going to be tight with personnel because we have rising enrollments, but we are doing the best we can, and I appreciate the push from the board to make sure we have those people in.
Well, and I'm very grateful that you hear us, and I'm very happy that we're adding a learning consultant at the high school. I think we're adding a social worker at
Yes,
the high school.
yes.
And so this is important because we want to make sure that every child has someone to go to, and this is just making that much more easier. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, any other comments from the board or questions? Now, Ms. Kenner, you're going to have to help me with the agenda items on F, because some of them are not motions that we need to
Right.
need to
The
make.
rest of it was just really, the next two categories were just information, because there's been a lot of discussion on Cranberry and charter schools, so it's really not for now. It's really for people to be able to take the information and read it at their leisure, like particularly the public.
Well, thanks for reminding me of that. I did want to mention, that was the other question. I remember I had another question, and it was, because there's been questions raised about Cranberry, if you look at our income, our revenue items, it's about $5 million of revenue. The formula is driven by the state. We don't have the flexibility to charge them something else. It's a driven formula, as is other formulas that we have to deal with that are state law. And I think you all know what I'm referring to. And so that $5 million roughly of revenue is crucial. And as a taxpayer, you should care, because if that revenue stream were to go away, our taxes would either go up by $5 million if they could, or the budget would go down by $5 million.
They can't go up by 5 million, because
Of course
we have a
not.
2% cap.
Yes. So that's what I said, if it could, because there's a 2% cap. So that Cranberry revenue is valuable to us. It helps our educational mission. We have a long partnership with Cranberry, and so it's just not a meaningful or financially even logical thing to do to suggest that we somehow take Cranberry out of the mix. And so I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah,
I could ask Gabe if you could put up the CBSD tuition revenue over time.
Yeah, well, this is
Just
an
real
important
quick.
point, because we have had questions from the public about this, and I think there's an acknowledgement that we have a long history with Cranberry and great contributions that the families and the students make to the Princeton Public Schools in the area of academics and the arts and athletics. Social interactions, but there is a really important financial contribution that cannot be overlooked. So this is the, I guess,
Real quick,
yeah,
the
go ahead.
last 11 years, so what happens is there's an estimated tuition that they pay, that Cranberry pays, based on an estimated amount of enrollment. So you can see in the first year, for example, 256 kids were estimated at $15,000, and that's what we collected. At the end of the year, 2 years later, the certified rate comes out. So they had to pay $15,657 instead of $15,073, but their enrollment went down. So they were only required to pay 3.7. Their estimated enrollment was higher than actual. So we had to give them back 69,000. So how that happens is it's adjusted in the next year to come. So when the 15,817 is charged and we get 4 million, it's based on that enrollment number, but then it's also adjusted by the prior year adjustment. So in the end, the amount that was charged and has been collected by Cranberry over the last 10 years has been almost $42 million.
The most important numbers, however, are at the very bottom, and I'm not sure everyone can see those. So let me just talk you through those. So there's $4.8 million as part of the operating budget. So that's the money we spend each year. And as you know, we're a labor-intensive institution with very caring teachers and staff. And so we are looking, if we consider the Cranberry enrollment, we have about 280 students from Cranberry at the high school. So that's 70 students spread across 70 students in each of the 4 grades. If those students were not with us, if by some measure we were to not have our relationship with Cranberry, we probably would not need a dozen teachers for those 280 students, if you think that through. 12, 13, 14, somewhere in that range. So the effective loss to us of the $4.8 million of tuition, if you take out the approximately $1 million for the teachers that we would not need, we would still be losing effectively about $3.8 million from our operating budget every year. The cost of that, $3.8 million, would be about 50 or 40 teachers, 40 FTE. We have 139 teachers at the high school. So we would be losing the 12 that perhaps we may not need because of reduction in enrollment, but then another 40 on top of that is funded by the tuition from Cranberry. So we would be losing about 40% of our teachers at the high school, and Cranberry makes up about 20% of the school total, 18%, something like that. It would be a huge blow to the educational program at Princeton High School.
One of the other things, thanks to Bill, there was, we had discussed this at Finance, and Bill had put together the conversation in a written format of the explanation of, Gabe, could you pull up the Cranberry financial relationship explained?
Bill, do you want to practice this one, like yourself, since you wrote this?
Gulp. I guess at so many track meets and soccer games and baseball games, people try to ask me to explain Cranberry, and I never could. And so I asked, Superintendent Cochran and Stephanie yesterday to make it finally clear to me, because I just couldn't understand. They'd say, well, and actually, if you scroll down a little bit, I tried to give the explanation, so I don't want to just read it aloud. Yeah. But as best I can understand, we try to come up with a analogy to a mortgage and how that works here, and how it's similar to a mortgage where you are making your mortgage payments just like you're making your debt payments. And the school district has about $5 million of debt payments. And then you also have your daily living expenses, your clothes, your car, food and utilities, just like the school district has its operating expenses, like the teachers and everything else. And so let's see if I can explain this right. So the question I always have is, once the debt's gone and Cranberry's gone, then it balances out. But the problem is, unlike a mortgage, once the debt's gone in a school district, that money goes out of the budget, and we can't.
It's not transferable to the operating budget.
We still have the operating expenses, unlike a mortgage where when your mortgage is paid off, you get to spend that money on a new car or
vacation.
So I don't know if I'm explaining it as well as it's written, because it finally made sense to me
so
after
essentially,
talking
let me
about.
see. So we have about $5 million in debt service based on the past bonds that we've put out, and some of those will be maturing, I guess, 2022.
Will be
all right.
All gone by
So in 5 years, that debt will be gone. And I guess the question that people have asked you, and I haven't received this, is if we're getting $5 million about from Cranberry for our operating budget, and our debt now is gone, it's down by $5 million, doesn't that sort of offset, and do we still need to have the tuition from Cranberry? And the point you're making is that the operating budget is like our checking account, perhaps, or daily, yearly expenses. The debt service is not unlike a mortgage in that it's extended over a number of years, but once you've paid off that mortgage, the money that you're paying each month into that mortgage for a house, if you pay it off, now becomes liquid to you. But in a public entity, that just is tax, that's no longer money that we can access through the tax system. We can only raise the tax levy by 2%. It's that $73 million. We can only go up by that 2%. So that $5 million in paid off debt just becomes paid off, and we have no access to those funds.
And if we lose 280 kids, then we're not going to get a growth enrollment.
Right. So
I
we
mean,
can't
might
even.
eventually, but it's not going to happen the year.
And you'd still be missing those, 40-something teachers.
Correct.
And I think you also mentioned that the way the district is going, maybe you put off the need for a new school for a little while, but not for that long.
Well, it's worth mentioning that.
New expansions, I'm sorry.
So the mayor did announce that there was a settlement regarding the fair share housing in principle. And we're waiting to see what that number turns out to be, but we will be having to plan for additional housing in Princeton and incorporate that into our long-term plan for the district 10, 15 years from now.
So I look forward to the next baseball games and track meets and soccer games to
You can-
try to
you
explain
can
it a little
practice
better than
that,
I
yeah,
just did
yeah.
now. Put me on the spot here where I was.
Sorry about that.
No, it's good. It's
was
good.
just-
I should have prepared better.
Yeah, that's okay. You can just print it out for yourself and just carry it around in your wallet.
Okay.
But while we're talking about housing analogies, it looks like we're going to need a home improvement, and we're going to have to take out a home equity loan. And so I just want to be clear that everyone understands that the law does allow Cranberry to help us with the interest on the debt service.
That's correct.
That's correct. So, and in the past, have they helped us with the
Yes.
debt? They
Yes, they
have.
have.
Okay. So it's not a precedent. So
No.
my point is that I agree that Cranberry allows us to have more programs than other high schools, and we value their contributions. But when the time comes for the Princeton taxpayers to be burdened with more debt, Cranberry will be joining us to the extent they are permitted to by law.
And I just wanted to thank, everyone here, including my colleague to my right, about the analysis, because it really helped me to crystallize the impact that Cranberry does have in making our high school much richer in terms of curriculum and in terms of just, our friends and colleagues
Correct.
over
Yeah.
23 years. And I think that's really key as well.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, so as I was, unless there's any other questions or comments from the board, the question I had for you, Ms. Kennedy, is in order.
Then we can open into public if anybody has any questions on the budget. That's the budget hearing.
Okay, so now we have a public comment question or comment period with regard to budget only, item F only. So if anyone in the audience would like to make a statement about or question about the budget, this is your time to do so. Okay, and if there's no one coming to the microphone, so now is it time for a motion?
Now it's a time for a motion, and what I'd just like to point out, because of our newfangled system here, I was able to put Budget B and Budget A on. Budget A is the tentative budget that was approved on March 16th. Budget B is what we just went through. So if the board is in support of Budget B, we'll move Budget B and we'll ignore Budget A.
Okay, so can I have a motion for, should we start with Budget B?
Budget B.
A motion for Budget B, Greg, and a second? Connie?
So can I just ask what happens to Budget A?
I just delete it.
Okay.
So it's very simple. Amazing.
So we had a second for
So it's
Connie, and
Connie.
is this a roll call vote, or?
Well, it's not a roll call vote, but you can do it electronically if you'd like.
No, we're afraid of that. We like the old way. Yeah.
If you don't want to, I can.
I'm afraid of it. I like,
Listen, look, see, I did open voting
we've
online.
been doing
so
show of
that
hands
means
since ancient
everybody-
Greece, and it's worked out
So now
well.
you can see, now go ahead. See it? Now you gotta look at your screen. It's one click. Yeah, it's
Okay.
one click. That's it? We got a yes from one so far, yes from two. Oh, we got, I feel like we're doing like the lottery or something. Okay. Did you gonna vote? You gotta save it. Yeah, you gotta enter it? Yeah, you didn't show up yet. I have one person hanging out there.
So we have a hanging Chad situation now that we never would have had.
Okay, looks like it's a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you, and thank you again, everybody, for all of your hard work, the board, for all of your hard work in putting this together. It was a lot. And I think we've I commend everyone on this board for their passion and their focus and really keeping in mind what matters, which is our children. So thank you to everyone here.
Did you see it on the screen, the votes going up?
No, only at the end. Maybe that's by design.
Yeah, it only shows when they're actually committed, I think.
Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
does
So I
that,
saw them.
does that then bring us through, all the way through item F, to item G? Is that
Remove
correct?
this motion, okay. I'm removing the
clicking it out?
motion. There we go. Poof. Gone.
Okay.
So now we're at item G, correct?
We are at item G. Yes, we are.
Okay. So my board president report will be fairly short tonight, but I just did want to say a few things about sort of where we are, just to give people a sense. I mean, things are, it's really exciting to be on the school board this year for me, and I think for all of us. A few things that are just continuing, so we don't have to talk about them in great detail. Our litigation against the charter school continues. As you saw, that was, I believe, the third largest item in our budget is payments to the charter school after salaries and benefits. So we hope that will be successful, but I know there were people here at the last meeting who were asking that we continue to fight that fight, and we are continuing to fight that fight. As Ms. Kendall and others have referred to, we are continuing to look at referendum planning for new facilities to deal with our overall enrollment increases. That goes on. And I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, Daphne, but just wanted to mention that the ad hoc committee on not-for-profits in town met this month and is starting to strategize and come up with some metrics about how we make that approach to some of the non-taxpayers in our community. That's really exciting. And I'll just say that some of us yesterday spent the whole day of 8:45 to about 5 o'clock looking at the reappointments for the district for all of our teachers. We spent the day really understanding the developments among especially our younger teachers and some who are just about to get tenure. And the phrase that we started laughing about halfway through the day was rock star, because we could put a band together with all the rock stars that we've got. We have. But it was really exciting. One of the things that was exciting to me, just to hear the language that the principals were using around differentiation and around innovation. And some of the questions that all the teachers got asked this year is, what are you doing to differentiate? What have you done to innovate? Explain, what's really been an innovative or a learning experience for you. And just to hear that language from me, I've been here a while, very, very refreshing and exciting. So, that's another thing that's ongoing, but just wanted to report to the community that things really are changing. Mr. Carell referred to it earlier. Things are changing, and it's great. And I commend, the teachers and the administration for coming together and making these things happen. The last thing is I'll mention, I know it's going to be mentioned elsewhere tonight, is the wellness survey that Brian and Abby will probably talk about, I imagine. There's some pretty shocking statistics that they will go over. I imagine that we'll cover that later, so I won't cover it tonight. But I will reiterate again that, I was at the meeting that Mr. Snyder was, reaching out to the community last week to talk about the issues of stress at the high school and talking about ways that things could be fixed. And I thought that was wonderful to hear. And I will just reiterate again that we hope, I think, as a board, to see action that's not just long-term action, because that's really important, to really think about ways that we can have, as Mr. Snyder says, kind of a school of the future, and think about the most effective ways to educate children in today's world. But there also has to be changes that are meaningful right now and meaningful in September of 2018. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit more, but I just wanted to highlight that because that's going to be a thread through our discussion tonight. So with that, Steve, turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I actually have two important topics that I'd like to address tonight. The first is to talk honestly about racial bias and racial literacy in the Princeton Public Schools, and the second would be to address the presentation that many of us attended on Wednesday, April 19th, about the Challenge Success Survey data, the wellness survey, and what that revealed to us and how we are going to move forward. So last month, I spoke to the community about our district's focus on equity. And I defined equity as the removal of barriers so that everyone has access to learning and to achieving their full potential. And I spoke about physical barriers and economic barriers, and I also spoke about barriers of bias. And race it's a real issue in our society, it's a real issue in our schools. And we learned that lesson once again with the recent use of the N-word by a student at PHS. I think it actually occurred, it came to light the day of our last board meeting. While it would be inappropriate for me to discuss the disciplinary status of any child in our district, I do want to state for those who may have been wondering that incident was investigated and responded to with the utmost seriousness by our administrators. I also want to share that when the incident came to light, many of our teachers at the high school recognized and responded to the need of students to talk about it. Our social studies teachers in particular recognized the need and committed themselves to an honest, authentic discussion with their students. They put aside their lessons that they had scheduled for the next day to ensure that every one of our students at the high school had the opportunity to be a part of a meaningful discussion on racial bias. As a district, we began this year with a clear commitment to expand racial literacy for ourselves as educators and for our students. It's not an easy task, but it's an incredibly important one, perhaps the most important one. And it's one in which I have to say I am continually learning. This past week, I was asked to sit down with a number of our Black African-American staff who wanted to share some things with me. And not all of it was easy to hear, but they were kind enough to meet with me, and I learned from those perspectives. I also had a meeting with representatives of our community who were interested in what we are doing to enhance racial literacy. And so I want to share tonight what I shared with them to underscore our commitment to this critically important work. So, racial literacy in terms of training for staff, in terms of what we're doing with curriculum revision, and also what it means in terms of students and student dialogue. So looking first at professional development for staff, this is just a few of the things that we are doing or planning to do. We have had seed training in the district for, I think, 15 years or so. Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity is a national organization. There are 3 workshops that all of our new teachers attend that enhance their understanding of culture and how to interact with students and families from different backgrounds. We began this year with very specific sessions on cultural responsiveness for our staff. So in the fall, we had sessions led by one of our supervisors, Beninder Mehabar. We had sessions on February 17th for all staff at JW, led by Professor Tara Doty and Victorious Hall. These are 2 African-American professors. One is a professor, one is I think a vice principal at a school. Came in, worked with our staff on the idea of implicit bias. Those same individuals so impressed me and our interim assistant superintendent, Dr. Roche, that we have invited them back to conduct workshops with our staff this summer. And we're excited about work not only on understanding our own implicit bias as adults and as educators, but also to begin those conversations and develop those skills to lead discussions with our students. So that's the summer session on implicit bias. We had also this summer, we have our admin team is scheduled to meet with Professor Eddie Fergus from NYU on August 15th. We'll be joining together with administrators from Hopewell and administrators from West Windsor to do work with him on the issues of equity. And Dr. Fergus actually met with a group of our administrators earlier this year, really exploring how we look at curriculum and unpacking it to ensure that we have a sense of cultural responsiveness and equity in all aspects of our curriculum. And we're continuing with plans for a county-wide equity institute. So Several of the superintendents and I met this past week with a potential funder of this Equity Institute, and the goal here is to have permanent people on staff who will be able to conduct workshops, training in understanding bias, in leading discussions, facilitating discussions with students in how to write and revise curriculum through the lens of equity. And also, they would be able to bring teachers, educators together across districts. So teachers from Princeton could be learning with teachers from Ewing or Hamilton or Trenton. And the professionals, the experts could then also come into the district and spend several weeks helping us with the work that we need to undertake. Looking at racial literacy through curriculum revision, some very exciting things are happening. We're looking to rewrite the third grade curriculum, moving away from the focus we've had for a long time just on colonial times, and start looking at contemporary issues, one of which will be school segregation in Princeton. And there's a lot of history about that in Princeton, and it's important for our students to understand that. I'm very excited about this next resource. I would include any of you who are interested to go on to teachingtolerance.org and look at Perspectives for a Diverse America. This is a resource that our elementary folks are going to be looking at on May 8th, along with something else I'll mention in a moment. But it includes this anti-bias framework focused on identity, diversity, justice, and action, and that action piece ties into the work that we've been doing this year with our service learning committees, trying to ensure that our students are not just learning facts and knowledge and skills, but are able to really see ways that they can make a difference in the world now. Diverse, rigorous, multimedia text. So it's novels, it's articles, it's video clips, rigorous, high-level texts that blend with what we're doing already with the reading and writing workshop. And so we're very excited about that resource, as well as the classroom index that I think we talked about at our last board meeting. We had Priya and Winona there to share this book that they had created. So we're now bringing teachers, all elementary teachers together to go through this document, brainstorm together what they can do with this to change and invigorate the curriculum that they're already teaching. And of course, then looking at how to diversify the classroom libraries that they're all using. In addition, we have a new class being taught at JW, it's elective on race and culture. I think some of our 7th graders are in that class. One of the things I was very excited that came out of the discussion we had with the social studies teachers at the high school, who took very seriously and take very seriously this mission to make our students facile and literate in an often racially charged world, was this idea of recrafting the US 1 curriculum, which all of our freshmen take, and developing a unit on race at the beginning of that unit, a unit on race in America and how we talk about it, and give our kids the skills, the ability to have a safe place to talk about race, but then use that unit on race as a touchstone throughout the rest of the semester as they move through, the rest of the year as they move through the curriculum. Race is a huge theme and a driving force in United States history, and it needs to be looked at from multiple perspectives and talked about, and I'm very excited that our social studies teachers are taking on this. And then at the same time, our English teachers at the high school are re-examining their summer reading list through the lens of diverse genre and diverse cultural texts. So that's some of what we're doing to really promote racial literacy. And then just a few things about what's going on with our students. I've talked in the past about days of dialogue. As you probably have picked up, Mercer County as a whole is very committed to this issue of racial understanding and racial literacy. So we have had 3 days of dialogue that have brought together teams of students from each of the high schools in Mercer County. We actually included Montgomery and Allentown High School now. So 17 high schools. There are teams of 10 students and 5 adults who have now come together 3 times over the course of 2 years to delve deeply into issues of race and racial literacy, how we talk about race, And we've had Dr. Ruha Benjamin, who is a professor at Princeton University and also one of our parents here in Princeton, who has been a powerful keynote speaker at 2 of those 3 days of dialogue. Growing out of that, some of the same students who went to those days of dialogue, some of our MSAN students, Minority Student Achievement Network, and other groups have come together to sponsor this event on next Saturday, 9 to 1. See Me, Hear Me, this honest dialogue with today's youth. So Pulse is some of our young, I forget exactly what Pulse stands for, but it's many of our young African-American women at the high school. PRESA is our support staff organization. They have helped to co-sponsor this event, and it's being funded with a grant from the NJEA. So I really encourage, they have a wonderful speaker, and there's a roundtable discussion, and I know that many of the student staff, administrators from throughout the district are eager to attend that, and I would invite members of the community as well to be a part of this discussion. So racial literacy, it has a wide number of definitions. It can be defined in terms of understanding the experiences and perspectives of those whose cultures and colors might be different than our own. It can be defined in terms of our awareness of our own biases, and we all have those. And racial literacy can be defined in terms of our willingness and our ability to honestly acknowledge that racial issues do exist, and that when they arise, that we work to address them. And I believe that as a district, we are striving to do all those things, and I'm proud of the work we are doing, even as I know that there's more that we can do. So turning now to the second issue, we are also striving as a district to enhance wellness for our kids, and to do that while also deepening their engagement with learning. And as was referenced before, I think Raisa mentioned it, and Mr. Sullivan talked about it. We took a major step forward in this effort this past Wednesday when Principal Gary Snyder and Assistant Principal Jessica Baxter invited parents, teachers, and other administrators to PHS to listen to the voices of our students, really, is expressed through a survey designed by the organization Challenge Success. So Challenge Success is based out of Stanford University Graduate School of Education. It's an organization that works with high-performing high schools primarily throughout the country, and they have the stated goal of providing families and schools with practical research tools they need to create a more balanced and academically fulfilling life for kids as resilient, ethical, and motivated learners. So the Challenge Success survey measured our students' experience with a number of different topics, among them those listed here: stress, academic engagement, use of free time, perceptions of homework, extracurricular activities, teacher care, parental expectations, sleep, academic integrity, overall health and well-being. We had nearly 90% of our students take the survey, and the major takeaway, like students nationally, PH students are experiencing high levels of stress and lower levels of what one might define as truly joyful engagement with learning. So we had more than 80% of the students express feeling often or always stressed by their schoolwork. Only 15 indicated that they were truly enjoying the learning during their school day. As Mr. Snyder explained it, our students are in many cases what he called doing school. So they're working incredibly hard. They may actually even enjoy or be interested in the work that they're doing, but they're not always motivated by learning for the sake of learning. And this contrasts sharply with what nearly 75%, almost 3/4 of the students reported about engaging in their extracurricular activities after school. So they reported that they were doing that not for resume building, but primarily for pure enjoyment. And we heard Mr. Snyder tell us, and I'm sure that the students here tonight will attest, like there are kids in that building. We have to, 9, 10 o'clock at night, doing Model United Nations, doing debate, doing Science Olympiad. So the challenge, how do we get the motivation and the passion our students experience with their after-school activities into the regular school day? And what would that look like? So we do have a committee of faculty, administrators, a few parents who are looking at ways to make that happen. And so they have ideas about some changes in both instruction and in schedule. And I just mentioned possible strategies here because we're still very much in process. The faculty saw this data for the first time on February 17th. We shared it. They've been looking at it then since then as a full faculty, and as Dr. Carell mentioned, there's a lot of engagement with the data and with the desire to make some changes on behalf of our students. It was presented to the public, parents and students as well, on just on April 19th. So we're still looking at lots of changes, but changes around instruction, and one of the foremost instructional changes is really around problem-based learning, which is a method that challenges students to take their knowledge and skills and apply them to solving real-world issues. So those issues could be, as listed here, something from hunger to racial literacy, we just talked about, to sustainable energy, but it invites them to be innovative and interdisciplinary in their thinking. Problems from the world don't present themselves in a discipline. They're not restricted to science or social studies or math or language. They integrate all of those, and so it's important that to get to the higher level learning and the real engagement that we have the kinds of problems that cut across disciplines and that are also really personally meaningful to our students, so there's some choice involved. In looking at the schedule, they looked at possibly more breaks in the day, fewer periods, possibly changes in the way that the year is structured. So this idea of trimesters for some of our elective courses or some courses as opposed to semesters. And also playing with blocks of time. So Principal Snyder talked about the idea of 4 weeks of a more traditional class schedule, maybe followed by a week that's different, that's where the students have large blocks of times in which to engage in problem-based work, in which to engage in perhaps service learning, in research, performance, coming together with students that they may not ordinarily see or with teachers they may not ordinarily interact with, but it's set up differently as an opportunity to apply their learning in some really meaningful ways. Some other key takeaways from this survey, and I'm rushing through this. We spent 3 hours on Wednesday night going over this data, so I'm trying to hit just the high points, but it is posted online. I'd encourage people to take a look at it. Some other key takeaways from the survey include students spending an average of 3 to 3.5 hours a night doing homework. That was an average. There are probably students who are spending an hour, hour and a half more than that. Some students may be spending less. And also sleep, 6 to 6.5 hours a night of sleep. One of our parents here mentioned the important gender difference that came out from the survey data, that on average our girls are experiencing more stress, more homework, and less sleep than their male counterparts. So areas of urgency, and I use that term purposefully. Homework is one key area that all who heard the data felt that we can and should address. Based on the comparisons with other high-performing high schools that have taken the same survey, our students are doing 30 to 60 more minutes of homework per night. I know that our supervisors and teachers are committed to making changes in this area. Teachers have been actually asking students to do homework occasionally in class so that they can see how long it takes. Members of the scheduling committee have committed themselves to shadowing students for an entire day. I know that they are completely exhausted mentally and physically at the end of that day, and so have gained a lot from the sort of literally walking in a student's shoes. So I'm looking forward to seeing changes in the year ahead. Another related and urgent issue is this overall level of stress. Academic stress and levels of depression are at an all-time high nationally, not just for our high school, but for high school students across the nation and for college students. So we're committed to supporting our students who are struggling most immediately. But we're also committed to making changes in our system and in our culture that will reduce stress and increase joy for all kids. So one of the high points of the survey, a high point and a hope, And I believe a foundation of the work to come was the percentage of students who felt their teachers truly cared about them. That was actually higher at Princeton High School than in other comparison schools. I believe we have a truly remarkable faculty at PHS. They have listened to the voices of their students as expressed through this survey, and I know that they're committed to finding ways to two things, to deepen learning and enhance student wellness, and those are not mutually exclusive goals. They actually fit together. But they can't achieve that goal alone to make the changes that are needed for our students to truly thrive. We need the active support of parents, of students, of teachers, of the broader community. And so as a next step, we look forward to holding a meeting at the middle school to discuss ideas for making changes at the high school and some of the survey data. We also look forward to continuing our work with Challenge Success. On the short term, we want to disaggregate the survey data. That was one of the requests that came from many of those who participated in the session on April 19th, that there's rich data there that we can break down and glean more information from. So we're interested in doing that short term. And then long term, we really want to learn more about the research-proven, driven strategies that other schools working with Challenge Success have put into place. And we want to keep surveying our kids to see, to gauge whether those strategies are in fact successful. So, I want to thank the administration at Princeton High School. I want to thank the staff and our parents, and I really want to thank our students for looking honestly at this survey data and for coalescing around the idea of lasting and significant changes in the learning experiences at our high school and in the service of our mission, which is to prepare all students to lead lives of joy and purpose. So, thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So I attended Mr. Snyder's presentation last week, and I was very impressed with his presentation as well as Jessica Baxter's command of the information and her embracement of the project. There are critics that say that we had all this information before and what's going to change now. And so I believe that there will be change, but how can you answer that?
I have no doubt that we are going to move forward. I've sensed that. You listen to someone like Dr. Carell speaking. I think he was very honest. In the past, there might not have been an openness and willingness. We have actual data. We have 90% of our students. This isn't just data. This is the voices of our kids. And they're asking for our help. And the teachers who care about them, and we know they do from what the students have said, are listening. And the teachers themselves see that they can deepen learning, which is something they want to do. They don't want to be tied. Like a lot of the pressure that we're under as professionals, a lot of the pressure our kids are under is a result of this culture of testing and standardization and accountability to standardized tests, and not accountability to high-level learning. So I think all of us are eager for a shift, and a dramatic shift, and one that other schools might follow. We've sort of thrown the gauntlet down. We did this survey, and then we said, okay, come see it. I think it takes a lot of courage to say, I think, Risa said we weren't happy with the data. You're right, we weren't happy with it. We're not alone as a school, but we're not hiding from this. We're saying this is an opportunity for a school to become a true leader in high-level learning. And so I feel like we've put it out there to the community. We are going to continue a process that is inclusive. So the first step here was to educate students, to educate parents. We want to educate more parents. We want to continue to expand and educate the broader community so that the force, the momentum for change isn't just coming from the faculty. It's not just coming from the administrators of the board. It's coming from the students who said, I heard you, pledged to be behind this. It's coming from parents who really want to see change. And so I feel like if we have community behind this, we are going to see significant change.
Well, thanks, Steve. I'd like to commend, first of all, the teachers and the students, Brian and Abby, and before them, Maddie and Nick, and before them, the other student representatives who have been raising these issues. I'd like to commend the administration as well for focusing on these issues. And I'd like to commend the board because It was this board that commissioned, I believe it was this board that commissioned the Challenge Success Survey because we wanted to have data to be able to address this issue in a way that was quantitative rather than qualitative, and to not be dismissed for bringing up qualitative facts about sort of anecdotes without having a data framework. So I commend this board for really catalyzing this whole process. But before we pat ourselves on the back too much, we need to see results. And I think I said 2018, I meant 2017, I meant this fall, that we see results that are meaningful for the children who are in that building. And if we don't do that, then we failed. So, as I said before, very happy to have long-term solutions, but there also needs to be short-term solutions. I think also with respect to the great work that you're doing with respect to racism and racial literacy, I would just mention that speaker that you mentioned, who came this year, was here 10 years ago speaking about racism and racial literacy, and he's back. Nothing has changed that much. I think Student Achievement is going to talk about some initiatives that we would like to take in those areas to do something similar that we just did with Student Stress, to begin a quantitative process around that. So you might want to mention that.
Well, so Betsy will talk to that, but I just wanted to say what has changed with regard to racism is I think we are more willing to talk about it. And I know, which maybe we weren't 10 years ago, because it makes people uncomfortable. But I know that I have sat in on many conversations where Steve has just sat and listened. And it is very hard work to recognize the systemic problems that aren't just here, but, nationally, as the election showed us. So I just wanted to say that I think that's what's changed, is that we're willing to talk about it.
Good, thanks. Any other questions or comments?
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks again, Steve. And, thanks. And so that is item, bear with me just a second, item I, to accept the harassment, intimidation, and bullying report. I need a motion, please. Debbie, and a second, Connie. Ready, Stephanie? All in favor? Oh, you wanted us to do it electronically? Okay. All right. Anyone opposed, old-fashioned way? No? Okay, so now it's time for our board committee reports. And this is item J1, and so we'd like to start with Brian and Abby, our student representatives.
Hi everyone. So for today's meeting, we will again be focusing on the Challenge Success Survey. Surprise! But we'll be switching things up a bit to include parental responses and student voice. We'll start off by highlighting a number of key statistics that we found necessary to share.
So for those of you on the board, if you take a look at one of the packets that's entitled Stanford Challenge Success Survey Student Liaison Snapshot, for anyone who hasn't already seen it, this includes some of the statistics that we thought were meaningful for us as students. So I'm going to start off in the area of schoolwork and homework. We saw that 62% of students reported that they had too much homework. 81% of participants reported that they were often or always stressed by schoolwork. 70% of participants reported that schoolwork often or always kept them from having time with family or friends. 74% of participants reported that schoolwork often or always kept them from getting enough sleep. And 85% of students were not fully engaged in school.
Under the section Student Health and Well-Being, 40% of students reported that a stress-related health or emotional problem caused them to miss more than one day of school. 41% of students experienced exhaustion, headaches, and difficulty sleeping in the past month. These statistics that we opted to share are those that concern us and the ones that we would like to address with the utmost urgency.
And then today, in the interest of bringing the voices of our students to the board, we actually have recordings of some of our students with their responses to what they saw within the survey or just their personal opinions and stories. if some of the voices sound funny, we ran them through voice synthesizers to make sure no one could recognize who the students were. So I apologize in advance if you feel like you want to start laughing in the middle of this. But we're just going to play a couple of the responses real quick.
I guess what struck out to me the most about the Stanford survey is that when I went to the PHS parent night, I think I realized, just how real it was. Like, it was data on a screen that was being presented to the parents, yet at the same time, I was sitting there at 7 to 9 p.m., from 7 p.m. I hadn't had any time to start homework that day, and so it really struck home the fact that, like, this data is real and affects people in a very real way. So I guess I just, wanted to bring that to attention. I also found the data very interesting insofar as it was really in line as, what everybody thought it was. There were comments at the PHS parent night along the lines of, everybody already knew that this was what the situation was, and, I definitely agree with that. I think that the suggestions that were made at the PHS parent night were constructive. I do wish there would be more student voice in collaborating with the Bell Schedule Committee. I know there's already been some involvement, but more is always better, and this is in a way a part of that too. So I commend this effort. Concerning the survey data itself, I think that we really need to figure out why there are these disparities in gender, why it is that that females at PHS are working longer on homework, and it's not very obvious, and there are a lot of variables that will go into that. But I think it's really important to make sure that there's specific initiatives and efforts made towards that. Yeah, thank you so much.
Even though PHS is a highly competitive school, I do think that 81 is far too high for being often or always stressed. And I think the school could be doing something to alleviate that. And I'm really glad the school is finally taking action, because this has been going on for much too long. I also think that in terms of physical symptoms as a result of stress, having the 41% of students within 1 month exhibiting all signs like exhaustion, difficulty sleeping, etc., is a really alarming percentage. And I hope that the school can take effective action in order to prevent numbers like that from appearing in the school. And though the school is planning a lot of future experiments and plans for students, I also hope that potentially they can take some short-term action right now to alleviate some of the stress and the problems that the survey data reveals.
I think one of the most striking parts of the Challenge Success survey was the report on school stress and academic worries, namely the 81% of participants who said that they were often or always stressed by schoolwork, and then 70% who say that schoolwork often or always kept them from having time with family or friends, and 74% with not getting enough sleep. And I felt I was definitely one of the people who would have voted for experiencing those things, and I just think that it's not a healthy thing where a majority, more than a majority of the school feels this way. And a lot of it is my fault, just because I opted to take a lot of EP exams and I signed myself up for a lot of extracurriculars, knowing that they'd be very time consuming and things like that. But at the same time, I was enabled and I felt the pressure to do that just because that's what Princeton is known for, and that's what all my peers were doing and things like that. And when I talk to friends who go to different school districts, who tell me that they don't have this AP exam, or that they're not offering this course to sophomores or juniors and things like that, and they tell me that they can't take it for that reason, sometimes I'm really jealous of them, just because
I do have the liberty to take it, and if I don't, that's like looked down upon. But if they don't have the choice to not take it, they're not necessarily penalized for it. And I just think that that's something important to consider given how stressed out people are about schoolwork, which is something that I've just noticed in my own experiences where I had like troubles breathing for a really long time because of like how much anxiety I feel over getting a pop quiz in this class or preparing for a test in this class and then an essay in another class, and like all these things building up on top of like maintaining like good grades, extracurriculars, and just like all these different things. So I really hope that the school board is going to work to address these issues with the new results that they now have.
So we do have a couple more, but we're going to cut it short there in the interest of time. And we're going to transition a little bit over to the parent results of what we heard at the meeting on last Wednesday night. So there were actually over 70 adults in attendance, and I think they were all very eager to hear the information that Mr. Snyder and Ms. Baxter, they were presenting. And they had very productive discussions. So if you take a look at the second packet that's entitled Parent Comments on Challenge Success Survey Results, these are actually the notes that parents wrote down on these large sheets of poster that were placed at tables around the room.
Despite the varying opinions, we saw parental consensus on a number of issues. First of all, there appeared to be a significant interest surrounding the statistical gender gap. Notably, females reported significantly more of an overall homework load than males. Males reported having significantly more free time and more sleep than females. Females reported significantly more stress-related physical symptoms than males. And then males also reported significantly more teachers supported them than females.
And then secondly, many parents were interested in seeing the full statistical distribution of responses for each topic area broken down by both ethnicity and number of AP courses taken, particularly the second one. And many of them thought that the mean was underrepresentative of individuals, fearing that population pools would create a multimodal distribution. Basically, this would mean in the sense that there are small groups of students taking large numbers of APs and other groups that are taking small numbers of APs, and somewhere in the middle they mitigate each other and you lose sight of the potential extremes that exist within that range. Parents also observed a large proportion of students experiencing physical stress symptoms, with one arguing that such problems could easily magnify, like if a student misses a day of school because of a stress-related occurrence, and then the next day they need to catch up all of that work that they missed. You really see it snowballing, and that was a concern that a lot of parents had. And then they asked us a simple question that is perhaps not so simple to answer, and the question is, what can we do to help?
To start off, the two of us have a few recommendations. So rather than having teachers shadow students on the Bell Committee, which I think is a great idea, why not just invite more students to join the discussion? I think having parents or adults try to understand what students are going through the school day is great, but I think really we need to be asking the students who do it every single day, 180 days of the school year. Many of us are eager to contribute our input and are just looking for our schools to give us that opportunity. So we would like the board to create more opportunities for students to speak with you in a comfortable environment.
And then Mr. Cochran highlighted a statistic that surprised me that it was this high, and I was very happy to see it. And it's that 73% of our students are doing extracurriculars because they really love them. And that's a big deal. So in terms of fundamental changes at PHS, Mr. Snyder discussed this innovative concept of deeper learning, where extracurriculars are integrated into a student's classes or into the schedule. And I think that's something that could make a very big difference at the high school. So this would, as one parent noted, provide a mechanism of capitalizing on the immense passion towards extracurricular activities that we see among students of this district. Whether that means building a period in the day for computer robotics club students to code algorithms for their vehicles, or integrating a Model UN-style discussion into the world history class curriculum, deeper learning has the potential to significantly increase student engagement by making work personally meaningful. And correspondingly, we should see a reduction in stress levels as more school time is freed up for students to spend with more time that was originally used for schoolwork is freed up for students to spend with their families and friends. So these are the kinds of low cost to no cost solutions that we want to see happen now, and not something that should still be on the discussion board 4 to 5 years down the road.
Let's also look at more difficult change, like later start times. We already know that our students are getting around 2.5 hours less than the recommended 9 hours of sleep per night for high school students. The Stanford survey showed us that 53% of our students believe that revising the school schedule will be very effective in improving the student experience and reducing stress. Then, if we take a look back at September, 83% of students in a survey of 290 reported that school starting later would benefit them. The research, according to the Center for Disease Control, tells us that the recommended starting time for high school is 8:30. Even administrators at PHS recognize the potential benefits of starting school later.
But then all of this information is worthless if we don't take action. Shifting the school schedule is by no means an easy task. Will there be issues? Absolutely. Traffic, busing, athletics, and we recognize the difficulties associated with significant change. But the fact of the matter is that any time there's an attempt at progress, there will always be problems. We just think that once we set our minds to a goal, we will find a way to work through everything else. The first step is setting that goal.
It has been said that we are often, quote, eager of making change, but fearful of making change, unquote. As one parent aptly put it, sometimes, quote, you need some courage, just go for it, unquote. And that is exactly what we hope to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks so much. And now turning to,
Oh, one sec. I love that you guys took what we put on the board, you know, all the parents. I do. I absolutely love that I can read everybody's. So thank you.
No problem.
yeah, it's great. And we will hopefully see some action soon, but appreciate all of your work for a long time on this and your advocacy for these issues. Okay, turning now to finance. Since Justin Duran is not here tonight, is another committee member going to give the finance committee report? Okay, good. Thanks, Connie.
Okay, the Finance Committee met Monday, April 24th at Valley Road at 6 o'clock. The minutes were approved for March 27th. The billing lists for March and April were reviewed and approved. We reviewed the 2017-2018 revised budget, and it was also discussed. What was also discussed was the rebids for the replastering of the indoor pool at JW. Bids, invitations were sent to 3 vendors. One vendor responded and with a bid of more than twice the budget amount for this project. Another rebid that we discussed was the Gen Firewall security solution. 8 bids were sent to vendors. 4 was responded, and they were either non-compliant to the specifications or exceeded the budget for this project. Okay. Next meeting, Monday, May 22nd, 6 o'clock, Valley Road.
Thank you, Connie. And now it looks like you're up again on personnel.
Yes, okay. The Personnel Committee met April 24th. The meeting was from 8:45 until 4:45. Okay, the committee reviewed the minutes for March 20th, and they were approved. The committee reviewed the list of first, second, third, and fourth year administrative and professional staff. The committee listened to presentations from principals and supervisors on the non-tender candidates eligible for tenure in the next year, as well as first, second, third non-tendered staff. Those being recommended for reappointment will be acted on at May 9th board meeting. The committee reviewed potential questions asked by administrators to assess each staff member's capabilities when assessing tenure and reappointment decisions. The committee tabled a discussion on the process to use when a staff member requests the restoration of an increment that was previously withheld. The committee also discussed financial matters, confidential matters related to the district. Next meeting, Monday, May 8th, 8:45, Valley Road.
Thanks, Connie. And it looks like I went out of order a bit, so just circling back to facilities, Daphne Kendall.
Thanks, Pat. The Facilities Committee met yesterday, April 24th at Valley Road. The first issue we discussed was the results from testing for lead in our schools. Testing is being conducted in all 6 schools in the district and will include all water fountains and any sinks from which water is regularly consumed. Testing has been completed at 3 schools, Johnson Park, Community Park, and Riverside. The results from the first round of testing showed 5 water fountains or faucets had lead levels that exceeded the EPA action level of 15 parts per billion. One location was at Riverside, 3 were at Johnson Park, and 1 water fountain had higher lead levels at Community Park. Please check your school's webpage for specific information regarding lead testing at your school. Testing will be completed at Princeton High School, Littlebrook, and JW by May 5th, and results will be made public shortly thereafter. Going back to the 5 sources of water that had higher lead content, the faucets, we believe that the lead is coming from soldering in the faucets. Our buildings are old and some of the faucets are old. The faucets have been replaced, and we believe that will remedy the situation. Any questions should be directed to Gary Weissman, and thank you. And next on the agenda was a capacity study and a demographic study. We are waiting on learning the terms of the settlement between the town of Princeton and the Fair Share Housing Center. Once we have this information, which is the number of affordable housing units that will be built, as well as the type of housing and how many market rate houses will need to be built, we will provide this information to the demographer and to the architect so they can update their information accordingly. The Facilities Committee is working with administration to explore options to address rising enrollment, and we will be discussing other plans to address the immediate growth in the district. The next facilities meeting will be Monday, May 22nd at 11 a.m. at Valley Road.
Thank you. Next, policy, Betsy Baglio.
Yes, we met twice. In April, the policy committee met here at Valley Road, April 3rd at 1 p.m. and April 19th at 12 p.m. We approved the March minutes. We have 2 policies on the agenda for a second reading this evening. The policies are unchanged as of our last meeting. We have 1 regulation related to materials for blind or print-disabled students that is up for a first reading tonight. We also have 2 policies up for a first reading. One is administering an opioid antidote. The policy committee believes that if we have the ability to save lives, we must. Director of Student Services, Mickey Crisafulli, has already started looking into training for school nurses and available funding through grants. There is also a policy related to student assessment that updates our current policy to bring us into compliance with state regulations. Policy is a public meeting. We invite the public to attend. A community member did come and raise a concern that there's a perception the district is not addressing inappropriate conduct by students. Superintendent Cochran at the policy meeting, as well as this evening, reiterated it is the district's practice not to comment on individual students or situations. The committee wants the public to be assured that the board takes all such occurrences seriously, as does the administration, and we work closely with the superintendent and the administration to ensure the situations are handled fairly and in accordance with the community's values. We also discussed signage at John Witherspoon related to the food service account policy that we approved for a second reading last month. It was approved at our last meeting, and it specifically stated students would receive a complete meal even if their account is in arrears. There was signage that incorrectly stated no food was available to students who didn't have the money, and we've been told that that has since changed. It's the intent of the board, obviously, to ensure that no child goes unfed during the school day, and we encourage and urge all teachers and administrators to continue to help us ensure that this is the case. Our next meeting is Monday, May 8th at 1 p.m. here at Valley Road, and we do encourage and invite you to attend.
Thank you. Just a question on the opioid, I know your policy, not implementation, but do you know when it's expected that we have the antidote in place?
So Mickey is looking into that now. So this is the first reading, obviously. Next month will be the second reading. But within the end of the school year?
Oh, yeah.
End of school year.
We already have training scheduled for our nurses.
That's great.
So we're going to be moving ahead with that, and then we just need to get the antidote.
Good, that's great. We should probably, that's something that maybe we should focus on, drug and alcohol abuse as an issue sometime in the future, maybe not this spring, but soon. I was, just as an aside, I was speaking with a former administrator of Andover High School in Massachusetts. They've lost 12 children to opioid deaths since, in the last few years. So it's a real issue up there. That's only 4 hours away. It's, it will be here before long, unfortunately, I'm afraid.
So this is not a required policy, but Mickey Crucifeli lives near the shore, and those communities have been hit harder with the opioid crisis than we have. And when we said that, when we were discussing this, Mickey said, absolutely, let's do this. And so she's really undertaken this, and it's something that will be great.
And we also discussed in policy that it's not just our students and our staff in our buildings, but we have visitors come into our buildings. And this is obviously something during the school day that would help everyone, we hope.
Great, thank you.
Oh, just a quick note. I think if we have the opportunity, we should invite Professor Angus Deaton from Princeton University to see if he can give us a talk on the opioid research, since he is at the forefront of that.
Thanks. Okay, student achievement, back to you, Betsy.
Back to me. We met here in this room twice in April, 2 meetings a month, Friday, April 7th and Friday, April 21st, both at 11 a.m. There is much exciting and innovative work happening in the district. For full detail, please join us at these meetings. I want to start by saying that. People who come say they're happy that they've come, and we really do encourage and invite you to come. Following are some highlights of what we discussed in April. We approved the minutes, the March minutes. Science Supervisor Eddie Cohen came to share an update about the science curriculum review. We referenced that in the budget because this includes the purchase of new materials that elementary teachers have been piloting across the district at every school. Dr. Cohen and our K-5 teachers enthusiastically support this purchase of Amplify Science materials and have, as I said, piloted them in every school. The revised amount that these materials will cost will be just over $100,000, which will allow the materials to be housed at every school at every grade and will be shared among teachers, which anecdotally teachers said they actually wanted to share the units and didn't necessarily need a unit for each teacher at every grade level. So these hands-on materials, which contain accommodations for special education students and materials in Spanish as well, will allow science lab teachers to teach thematically and classroom teachers to teach by topic. It's our hope, I know it's the teachers and administrators' hope, as well as the boards, that the new material will generate wonderful discussions among our elementary teachers and science educators, further ensuring consistency across all 4 elementary schools. Carol Roche presented information about new early literacy and mathematics workshops for parents of current preschool and incoming kindergarten students. These are new initiatives in our district, and they'll happen in May. We discussed the development of an exit interview in the form of a survey to be sent to families who choose to leave our district. These exit surveys will seek information related to why families are choosing to leave the district, as well as their perceptions of what their new school will offer that they're not finding here at PPS. And we're really looking forward to developing those surveys soon. This led to another discussion about gathering information related to all parents' satisfaction with their child's educational experience in the Princeton Public Schools, and the committee looks forward to identifying future surveys, very similar to the Challenge Success surveys, and also the tutoring survey that went out. I think the committee and the administration really values this data, and we want to have more of it. To use to make changes that are data-driven. So these future surveys would be related to satisfaction for all families, including, as we discussed, issues of race as they relate to the achievement gap and our students' experiences in our schools. We heard from Tim Charleston about the unconference, and I was really happy to hear Dr. Correll speak about it tonight as well. So it took place with teachers March 17th. Teachers were able to come in, and that day many of them had previously planned, but they that day offered what workshops they would offer to their colleagues and what workshops to sign up to take from other colleagues. It was so well received that 93% of teachers agree with Dr. Carell that this should happen again. So we're really interested in future professional development days. We had, I'm telling you, these meetings are full meetings. So this is the abridged version. Krista Galen, the instructional technology specialist, came to our last meeting to speak about the LMS rollout in our district and timeline for full implementation. The committee expressed concern specifically about training for students, that if teachers had set up their LMS, we wanted to be sure that students had been trained in how to access those sites. She reiterated this is a transition period and that this innovative work is in progress. So we will return to this in the next months. Carol Roche presented a preliminary but very exciting list of the 2017 Summer Professional Development Institute, made possible, as Superintendent Cochran said, due to our new daily rate for professional development, and this will include work on racial literacy. We discussed the possibility of offering a science class for students during the summer. More information about this possibility, including expected enrollment, regarding the need for this course will be shared with the Student Achievement Committee in May. Superintendent Cochran presented an update related to the district's strategic plan. We are moving forward, as you hear, in all ways with this plan. And one small example of that relates to us, the board. We will be initiating bagels with the board a few times a year, and we are setting up a date for this spring. So we want an opportunity to hear from you, and we will publicize this first date. We're going to meet here in this room when it's known. So we will also discuss an upcoming presentation, which will bring, as this was also already mentioned, the PHS Wellness Survey to JW parents, but we are including current 5th grade parents in that group as well, because we really feel that it's at the transitions that parents are very eager for information. This is tentatively scheduled for late May and will be discussed before that at Student Achievement in May. Finally, the dates of our May meetings are Friday, May 5th and Friday, May 19th at 11 a.m. And again, we encourage you to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one question, Betsy. With respect to the survey data, are you having Mr. Snyder come in May to discuss and
I'm not sure which date.
implementations?
Yes, that will be.
Yeah, I would think that it's really important that it be
Come
in
back in
May,
May.
and not June. I
Right.
think in the public meeting, he said that he was planning to come in June, but I think we should ask him to come
Yep.
in May so that there's time to implement things
Yep.
in the spring before people go on summer.
Absolutely. And also to discuss this JW presentation before it happens. And that's tentatively
Yes.
been set for late May.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay, so now we are on, thank you, everybody. There's so much work that goes on at the committee level. There's hours and hours that is volunteer time that is spent by this group of people, and I just want to express my gratitude for everything that you do to help this community and its children. So with that, we'll move on to item K, which is the public forum for agenda items only. Is there anyone who would like to come to the microphone to talk about anything on our agenda tonight? And if we hear none? Oh, we have one. Sorry, yes. Would you like to come to the microphone?
I want to make a few comments regarding the student survey. I think number one, I would say the trending research is very important. Since Stanford is doing the student survey and analyzing the result, I would recommend they will even follow these students into their college years. I think that will provide very deep insight regarding the education model changes and its impact for near term and for long term. The first point. The second point, I think I mentioned that during the town hall session last week. I would like to see a little bit more, survey information, especially regarding the self-estimate from the student regarding their mental and physical health. I overheard lots of challenges from other school districts. Many students are even under the antidepressant drugs. I would like to see what the status in our school district. Also, we've tried to build a historical record for the changes. to see the effectiveness of the model change. Also, another part associated with the assessment, student assessment, I would like to build the positiveness indicator for every single student in high school. Basically, if it's possible, it's better to build some survey questions, try to like students themselves to assess their views regarding their environment. Also follow up in multiple years in the high school, try to see the trend changes. I think that will provide lots of deep insight as well. Their views regarding their peers, their friends in the school, will be also a good indicator, good information for the analysis. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of the public? Okay, so thank you. And so then we'll move on to item L, policies for the first readings of 2 policies tonight. And Ms. Kennedy, just there. Okay, thank you. And on to item M. This is a roll call vote. May I have a for M1? L2.
Second reading, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, getting ahead of myself. So L2, we need a motion and a second. Thank you, Betsy and Connie. Okay, any questions or comments on L2? All in favor? Looks like it is unanimous. Any opposed? No. And now on to L3. This is just for information only. So now we're on item M1. And now, just to, I was kidding you a little bit about this electronic voting, but do you think that when we move on to N, O, and P, where there's a lot of items, would it be faster to do it electronically than to do continual motions, or is it about the same, would you say? Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's start with item M. Could we have a motion for item M1? Greg, and a second. Debbie. Yes. Yes.
Dr. Barb Nelson over at the high school in the English department is retiring after almost about 20 years. Bob came to us from Rutgers before he came to work at John Witherspoon back in 1998. And he worked there about 18 years and then transferred over to the high school in 2015, where he's worked for the last 2 years in the English department. He's served in many capacities. He serves on various English curriculum committees and the district's disproportionality committee. He also has coached many sports, including being an advisor at JW for girls soccer and cross country, and also at the high school for the as assistant boys coach, cross country coach too. He's helped organize many Super Saturdays at JW, and since 2000, and as well as chaperoning many trips. Specifically, his involvement in the environmental and the DC trips were always very highlights of his career at JW. What isn't known about him is that he's served as a judge on the Promising Young Writers on the National Council of Teachers of English, where he was sought after by the entire National Council for his writing experience and writing ability. And as a credit to him, several of his students have been selected over the years for poetry awards in the Arts Council of Princeton's annual competition. He's made a real legacy at 2 schools, and we wish him well in his retirement.
Thank you, Lou. Any other questions or comments before we vote? Yes, you have. So we can try that. So it's an online voting for item M1. Okay. And now on to item M2, job description manuals for 2017-18. Can I have? Well, may I have a motion for item M2? Thank you, Debbie. In a second. Daphne? Yep. And happy to do it the old-fashioned way or the technological way, whichever you prefer.
The slower way.
The slower, the faster way, whichever that is. Any questions on or comments on M2? Okay. And are we voting electronically? Ms. Kennedy? Debbie Daphne. Okay, fine. Show of hands for item M2. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, item N1. And we have to do these all independently, NOP, or can we do them can we group them at all?
Well, there's a couple in each little category because they were different. We're trying to condense them as best we can. So
Okay.
that's what we have to do.
Okay, so N1, may I have a motion for item N1, please? Betsy, and second, Daphne, thank you. All, any discussion?
Again, this is pass-through funds. These are pass-through funds that.
All in favor? Unanimous? And that leads us to O1, is that correct? Yes. Oh, is there an N2? Sorry, N2. May I have a motion? Thank you. Daphne, and a second, Betsy. Any questions or
And
comments?
can I just make a comment that the student field trip, I was told we didn't discuss this in student achievement, but it's because we only discuss overnight trips on student achievement, but this location changed. So it's a day trip that, it is an approved day trip that happens year after year, I assume, but the location has changed this year, which is why it's on the agenda.
Okay, thanks. Okay, all in favor of N2? It is unanimous. Item O, and this is O1. May I have a motion? And Daphne, and a second. Debbie? Any questions on O1 or comments? All in favor? Okay, thank you, unanimous. Item O2. May I have a motion, please? Daphne, and a second, Bill? Any questions, comments? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Item O3. I know.
Sensing the end.
Yeah. Item O3, may I have a motion? Please, thank you. Daphne, and second, Betsy.
Please.
Yeah. Any discussion on, Daphne, Betsy on O2? O3, sorry. All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Item P, financial reports, P1. May I have a motion? Thank you, Connie. Second, Greg. And any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. It is unanimous again. P2, general business items. May I have a motion, please? Daphne, and a second. Connie. Any questions on item 2?
So, Gary, can you tell us the rebidding, the timeline for replastering the pool?
The timeline for rebidding?
For the rebidding and then hopeful.
Because the next step is to
Yeah.
negotiate with contractors, so we're going to try to do that as quickly as we can, but that's going to take a little bit of time. Ideally, we want to do if we can do it, we want to do the replastering towards the end of August. But again, we have to go through the negotiation process first to see what kind of number we come up with.
Do you think we'll be able to fit this in the budget? It just seems like,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's quite a bit. Obviously, it's double what the engineers have told us it could be. So
We put it off for how?
I'm sorry.
We put it off last year, I know, correct?
We did, yeah. So I don't know. I don't have the answer to as far as when we could get it done. I mean, again, we're going to negotiate and see what we come up with.
So what happens if we can't negotiate it with our budgeted amount? Do we have to budget more money for it next year?
But not in not in the year that we just approved, because we didn't budget for it.
Right.
Oh.
So we'd have to, if we needed additional funding, there's a way we can, by board action and approval by the state, to move more funds out of capital reserve to address it, so we could do that.
Thank you.
It could be considered.
Thanks. Okay, any other questions on item P2? Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And that leads to item P3. May I have a motion?
We have a P3.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at page 3 on the next page. Sorry, never mind. Okay, so now we're on Q1. Old new business, new action. And now we're at item R, which is our final public comment period for any topic. Do we have anyone?
Hi, Bob Krell, science teacher. I want to follow up on the push for dramatic change in September of 17 at the high school. I think you know clearly how I feel about where we need to go, okay? If you remember back to a little bit over a year ago, February, I had a little heated discussion with Mrs. Spahn about whether or not anything was actually ever going to get done, if you remember correctly. And so, to me, I do want to get there, but I want to warn you against unintended consequences. Project-based learning as a change is not going to be a minor undertaking. It is going to involve major staff retraining, okay? For science, in a sense, I don't have a problem with it because we do labs and it's just making the different level of the inquiry in the labs. It's not a big deal in science. But for other teachers who have never done it before, you are not going to be able to throw them into the deep end and say swim or sink. Otherwise, this whole thing will blow up in your face. The other thing I want to say about it is every time we talk about things that we want to change, nobody wants to give anything up. If you listen to the student board reps at the last meeting when they talked about the proposed changes that were discussed with the student body, they didn't like the idea of a rotating schedule because it was too confusing. They didn't like the idea of reducing the number of APs because it would affect their college admissions. The students want everything and they don't want to give up anything, okay? So I think it's incumbent on the adults to make rational decisions and to make incremental changes that will eventually get us to large changes. But if you rush it, the whole thing, I am afraid, will crash and burn and we'll be back where we are today. There are several changes that the committee universally agrees on. The extra break during the day, it's pretty much, I can't remember somebody opposing it. A rotating schedule, we completely agree with it. A later start time, we completely agree with it. We just don't have no idea how to implement it because you have one discussion with transportation and all of a sudden, oh yeah, we have to have buses to the charter school at the same time. So, you know, we just thought it was, oh, flip the elementary and the high school, what's the big deal? We didn't realize it was more complicated than that. We also didn't think about the fact of the buses coming from Cranberry are going to run into more traffic later in the day. The sports thing, I think we actually could work around, but I just want to warn you about pushing too hard too fast and expecting too much too soon. Yes, it may not happen for this year's rising seniors. I'm sorry, okay? There will be some changes for them. There will be for the better, but in the long run, the system will be much better off if we do incremental change instead of dramatic change that will crash and burn, and that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. I agree with you, Bob. I mean, there has to be rational changes led by leaders who know the difference between, you know, things that can be done right away and things that can't. I think my concern, many people's concern, is that if we go the other way and think about, you know, the school of the future that includes video game learning, it's a wonderful goal, but you're not going to get there in anyone's lifetime, and so there's got to be some balancing. As you say, something has to give. Some people have to give something up, and you're not going to satisfy everybody. And again, just speaking for myself, not for anyone else, it seems that at least there's not, I think there's not one thing called homework. There's multiple types of homework. It's homework, it's plural, but starting to at least measure homework and looking at ways to adjust it is something that might be something you can do without thinking about the school of the future. So, there may be things, and it's going to require leadership from adults to figure out what those things are and make sure that it's not things that are going to blow up the whole system or, cause the process to freeze up.
I just want to say to you that the charge to the committee from the beginning has been we don't want to just tinker around the edges. We do want to make significant changes. I just worry about unintended consequences that people just don't foresee because they're in a rush to get something done.
Thank you.
Understood.
Agreed. Yep.
Rod Montgomery from William Patterson Court, merely a taxpayer. When I hear all the wonderful things that are happening and that are proposed, I'm occasionally tempted to move from my customary attitude of hopeful pessimism to the attitude of cautious optimism of which Superintendent Cochran once accused me. But like Michael Corleone, reality always grabs me and pulls me back. I should also mention that my comments are in the mode the positive psychology enthusiasts term active destructive.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm wearing my taxpayer shirt, right? I'm paying my taxes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for using them wisely. Some of my taxes go to pay Superintendent Cochran's salary. Some of them go to pay the salary of the leader of the charter school. What are those people doing right now with their time for which I am paying? They're fighting with each other. They're fighting with each other in court. Who's paying the judges? I am. What are they fighting over? My money. So, hopeful but pessimism. All right. I want to thank Mrs. Kennedy for continuing to improve the automated agenda. It's much easier in the new system to find the things I want and ignore the things I don't want to look at. I must confess, though, that the improved accessibility of the bills has caused me to waste more time than I would like to, so I'm going to have to learn to exert some self-control on my browsing through the bills. I'd like to applaud the efforts of all those attempting to extract revenue to support operations from the local large nonprofits. I hope those efforts prove successful, although, pessimism. I'd like to applaud both the board's pressure as articulated just a few moments ago by Mr. Sullivan and Dr. Carell's counterpoint to that concerning improving the high school. There is abroad in the land an enthusiasm for consensus, which I think is fundamentally unsound. Tension is good. Our rational disagreement is good. it leads to discovery of things that can otherwise be overlooked. So thanks, both of you, and please continue. I applaud the faculty and administration's work on the PHS improvements, particularly the presentations to the Student Achievement Committee on the study of advanced topics courses as an alternative to advanced placement courses. I wonder, though, whether that's a fruitful place to invest a lot of resources in the future. The big takeaway I took away from the presentation was that the Scarsdale model only works because they have double the physical space and double the faculty per student to support it. So you can't expect to just copy that model. You're going to have to build something yourselves, and it's going to take a lot of work. Second, the BSC, which I believe Principal Snyder described as the Bell Schedule Committee that does not talk about Bell schedules, was very impressive. A big takeaway I took away from that was the mention of the regulatory and standards creep that has been gradually layering more and more demands on both the faculty and the students. I'm afraid that the only relief you're going to be able to get from that is by political action at the state level, because that's where that's all coming from. I hope the board is investing some of whatever resources they have left after fighting with the charter school in exploring opportunities for that sort of action. I was impressed by the strategic plan, labeled on some pages, but not all, as a strategic action plan. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Pretty much all of it is going to require a lot of work by faculty and administrators. Where's the time to invest in that work going to come from? I respectfully suggest that you're going to have to stop doing some stuff that you're doing now. I also suggest respectfully that concerning Dr. Carell's concerns, it is easier to stop doing something than to start doing something new. So perhaps you should look first for things that you can stop doing. For example, athletics. I don't know how much resources are being spent on intensive team sports with statewide competitive schedules that add more and more demands on students' time versus opportunities for less time-intensive personal training work, which students might be able to carry more easily into their lives after school. Few of them are going to become professional football players or basketball players. All of them are going to need to develop habits of physical exercise, or they're going to get old and flabby like me. All right. Finally, I think you are still not exploiting the one resource that you have in great abundance, that is very cheap, and that will automatically increase in available quantity as your enrollments increase. And that is cheap child labor. There is a picture, I think, still on the PPS Vision website of, I believe it's the gentleman right here, who I think is a full-time employee of the district, with a big pile of computers to be re-imaged and re-batteried, I think. My first reaction on seeing that was, why are you not instead running a student child labor sweatshop to get that work done? This is not rocket science.
Class, right? Class.
I'm sorry?
You mean, we can't run a sweatshop, but we can run a class.
It's late. I'm babbling. Anyway, please, there are things that students can do. There are places in the strategic action plan where student participation, where the plan calls out student participation. I respectfully suggest that you look for more places where students can do non-trivial amounts of the work. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for your hard work on behalf of Princeton students.
Was this?
Who else?
Did you want to say anything about this important document? That
Is it not obvious? Is the relevance not obvious? Now, yes, I will say one
but there are
thing.
people maybe watching at home still who
Okay.
don't realize what we're holding here
You're-
from you.
What you're holding up is I have tried to give to each member of the board and an extra to the superintendent a copy of a book titled "Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be," which concerns selection of colleges and what students should expect to gain or lose by pursuing highly selective colleges and I'm fried. My brain is fried here. So I
Well,
hope
we
you'll
thank
enjoy.
you.
I must confess that I think the current student representatives are too far over the hill to profit from it, from the book very much, but perhaps they'll pass their copies on to juniors who are still young enough to benefit. Thanks again.
We thank you very much, Mr. Montgomery.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. And this is I'm going to enjoy reading this book. And if I believed in summer reading for students, which I don't, I would recommend that students read this over the summer. Any other public comments from the public? If there aren't, then we'll move to item S, which is adjournment, and we need a motion. Daphne, second. Greg, all in favor? And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.